When you think of a mythic character, what is the first thing that pops into your mind? A character who can overcome any physical challenge put in front of them, like Hercules, or maybe even like a superhero over-the-top character like were near indestructible aside from their own specific weaknesses. That is how I tend to think of mythical characters. They are so far beyond superhuman that they are given their own new title. They're not just powerful, they're not just above average, they're not just supernatural, they are mythical. So why does the Pathfinder 2e Mythic Rules not seem to represent that? Howdy, my name is Nonat, and recently I was talking to my good friend and fellow content creator, Callie Cutie. Go follow them, they're fantastic, they make great content. We were talking about Pathfinder 2e Mythic last night. We just got into the conversation and started rolling with it, and we had very differing views on it, which is fascinating because we tend to have very similar views on Pathfinder as a system. It's both of our favorite systems, we love almost everything the game does. However, our big stark difference is that she loves the way Pathfinder 2e has handled Mythic, where I have found it quite disappointing. So why is that? Why do I find the Mythic system so unimpressive at its core? Well, for me, it's part of wanting to be that Hercules, that Grecian myth of crazy above average abilities, not just being able to go above and beyond the call of duty, but also having these amazing powers to go about it. The thing that comes to mind recently is I've been listening to Epic the Musical a lot, and one of Odysseus's most mythical moments is when he grabs Poseidon's trident and fights him with it. He tortures Poseidon using this deity's weapon. There is clearly something mythical about Odysseus that follows him throughout the entire story. So, why does Pathfinder not let us get that same feeling? To catch you up to speed if you're unaware, the Pathfinder 2e Mythic Rules pretty much work as follows. You have 3 mythic points per day. You can spend those mythic points on typically one of 2 things. The first is the Rewrite Fate ability. This is the go-to mythic ability that, if I'm being honest, 90% of mythic points are going to be used on. If you ever fail a skill check or saving throw, you can re-roll it, but instead of your current proficiency, which might be like a +2 from trained, you get to use mythic proficiency, which is +10. So at low levels, this will tend to be a hero point that gives you +6 or +8 based on your base proficiency. And that's already an intrinsic problem for me. The better your character already is at something, the less useful that mythic proficiency is. If you are legendary in a skill, mythic proficiency is +2. Now, there are obviously more uses than just Rewrite Fate, but especially from levels 1 to 10, that's what they all feel like. If you look at any of the mythic feats available to characters from levels 1 to 10, you'll find they all say just about the same thing. You can roll blank at mythic proficiency. Sometimes with a small little bonus, like preventing yourself from drowning or dealing a bit of strength damage if you successfully grapple a target. There's also the Callings, which is sort of your mythic background that basically gives you a specific skill type that if you ever roll a crit success on it, gives you a mythic point back once per day. And on top of that, whenever you roll that skill, you can spend a mythic point to roll it at mythic proficiency, which already sort of has a problem to me, because why roll it using a mythic point when you can just roll it and either succeed and move on, or fail and then spend a mythic point to re-roll it anyway with Rewrite Fate. That's my main issue with Mythic in Pathfinder 2e. Once you hit level 12, it gets far more interesting because you get access to the Mythic archetypes. You get the Archfiend, you get the Apocalypse Rider, you get the Monarch. They're all really, really cool, but they don't need the Mythic system to be cool. In fact, they don't even require the Mythic system to use them. Only a few of the feats in each archetype actually need you to spend a Mythic point to activate them, and they're pretty well balanced as a whole. For example, the History of Violence feat on the Apocalypse Rider is a 2-action strike that if you hit, you deal bonus void damage equal to your key attribute modifier, which at level 14 is probably 5. You also deal that damage to everything within 30 feet, but at level 14, that's just a fair feat to me. 2 actions to strike, deal your normal damage, and deal 5 damage to the target and all enemies within 30 feet. That's decent. I wouldn't call it overpowered. And I hesitate to say it, I wouldn't call it mythical. You could tell me that was a champion feat or a cleric feat, and I'd believe you. That's sort of my entire problem with the mythic system in PF2. The options don't feel like a myth. They don't feel like something that someone would see and go, they're not human, they're something more. They're a mythical legend that we will write stories about. And then I talked to Callie. I told her all of my issues with Mythic, and she had a rebuttal that, while I don't fully agree with from my own perspective, I do respect and understand why she really enjoys the Mythic point system. It's because rather than this mythical power making your character stronger, overpowered, and this completely out of place legend in the mortal world, it rather just turns into someone who can control the story around you. You are meant to play an important part in the story before you, to the point where you, either as the player or even just as the character, have the power to rewrite fate, to roll something with so much determination that, especially at low levels, you can just make things happen. You know, if you need to push a boulder, and that boulder is going to require whatever, a DC 22 athletics check at level 1, well, if you have +4 strength and a mythic point, guess what? You're now rolling at +14. So if you roll an 18, you're critically succeeding at this already crazy superhuman task. And it's not to make you permanently stronger and able to move every 300-pound boulder you see. It's to make it so in that moment, your character is impactful to the story. The story itself becomes one of mythic value, not because the characters are intrinsically stronger, but because they are able to succeed against odds far more often. By utilizing these mythic points, especially if you are accomplishing mythic tasks to get them back mid-session, so everyone gets, 3 to 5 mythic points per session, you can have these Herculean tasks put before them. And even though the player characters are not intrinsically Herculean in nature, because they are not any stronger than a base class character, they can still accomplish these tasks by spending their mythic points to circumvent the odds. A check that would have a 10% chance of success at trained proficiency suddenly gets a +8 and gets bumped up to a 40% chance of success. This put a lot into perspective for me when it came to the Pathfinder 2e Mythic Rules, especially as they stand in War of Immortals. And I had this light bulb moment of the exact reason why I didn't enjoy them. And it's because Pathfinder 2e characters, by base rules, are already mythical creatures. They're already insanely over-the-top, crazy, powerful adventurers. I made a video about 4 years ago that I had completely forgotten about. If I can find it, I'll put a link to it if you want to watch my acne-ridden 25-year-old self bumbling on a couch, but the video came down to one statement. In D&D 5th edition, players are adventurers, especially from levels 1 to 10, they're just adventurers. In Pathfinder 2e, players are heroes. A level 1 D&D character can be killed by a stray arrow from a goblin, and that's just it. In Pathfinder 2e, you're not gonna get dropped in a single hit unless it's from like a boss level enemy. If you're a group of level 1s and you get crit by a level 2 mini boss elite monster, then yeah, you're probably gonna go down in one hit. But if you're level 1 and you're fighting a level 0 goblin, even if it critically hits you, it's probably not gonna drop you. They do like 1d6 plus 1 damage, so at max you're looking at like 14 damage, and even a low constitution wizard will have like 16 hit points. And I realized that I went into Pathfinder 2e Mythic with the wrong expectations. I expected the rules to make you stronger, to make you more versatile, to make you mythic, whereas that's not what they do. The mythic rules as written help to tell a more mythic story, because when it comes down to a mythical story, you think about someone who comes across as a vaguely normal person overcoming insurmountable odds. Look at the Odyssey. You know, Odysseus beats a Cyclops who should have beaten him to a pulp, escapes a witch who could have killed him in an instant by turning him into a pig, who defeats the literal god of the sea to get back home. This man can only roll so many nat 20s on his checks. No, that's actually really, really well represented by the Pathfinder 2e Mythic Rules. Odysseus, aside from a few small moments like grabbing Poseidon's trident, is just a man. That's a song from Epic. And honestly, looking at the Mythic Point rule as a way for your players to overcome those odds with a massively higher chance of success a limited number of times per day, that is pretty cool. It still doesn't fit my opinion of what Mythic should feel like. I do feel like Mythic should come with some level of mechanical improvement. It doesn't even have to be higher damage numbers. I'm talking higher saving throws, spreading out more damage, inflicting more powerful conditions, all those kind of unique ways that Pathfinder 2e can represent power. In fact, I think higher damage numbers are completely unnecessary in the grand scheme of it, but that's why I like the archetype so much from 12 to 20. I am still, unfortunately, a little bit upset at how late in the game those come in, that most campaigns won't make it to level 12, mythic or otherwise, but I guess I just wanted to make this video to talk about, I get it. I don't like Pathfinder 2e Mythic, but I understand now what they were going for. And if you're watching this, Callie, thank you for talking to me about it. It was a really cool way I'd never thought about the rules before. The last thing I want to say is that there is room to explore with that mythic power level that I was personally looking for, and I found that inspiration on the Mythic Ogre Boss stat block. Now, a lot of the mythic creature abilities are okay at best. In fact, I highly recommend if you're going to run a mythic creature, do it in a non-mythic campaign. It's going to be a lot more threatening because a lot of mythic abilities are actually just sort of shut off by fighting mythic characters. The most obvious example being Mythic Resistance. This mythic ogre boss has 7 damage resistance against all non-mythic damage or damage coming from non-mythic creatures. You know, if your fighter is suddenly hitting this level 7 creature for whatever, 30 damage, and that gets reduced to 23, that's a massive damage reduction. But if your party is entirely mythic characters, they automatically circumvent this. So definitely look into using mythic creatures against your party, especially if they're getting a little bit too big for their britches. You know what I'm saying? Just a little remind them of their place. But no, that's not even what I'm talking about when it comes to this inspiration for where to expand your mythic power. I read the stat block for the Gut Ripper magic item. I'm going to read it word for word just so you understand all of it. The Gut Ripper. This +1 striking ogre hook causes its owner to dream of past murders conducted with the weapon. Gut Ripper's mythic magic is tied to the bloodlust of the ogre boss who was holding it upon becoming mythic. If Gut Ripper doesn't kill a creature each day by midnight, it becomes a non-magical ogre hook. And for 2 actions and a mythic point, you can throw Gut Ripper in a line of any length up to 60 feet and return it to your hand. Each creature in the line takes 2d10 piercing damage with a DC 25 basic fortitude save, and if there's a creature at the end of the line, you can instead make a melee strike against it with the hook that deals an additional 2d10 persistent bleed damage, and each time a creature takes this bleed damage, you regain that many hit points. This is a healing vitality effect and can only be used 1d4 rounds, every 1d4 rounds. This is exactly what I want Mythic to be. It's not stronger than his melee attack. The Ogre Boss's melee attack is 1d10 plus 11. 2d10 is, on average, going to be always almost lower than that. This is an option. And if you can line up 4 enemies, all of a sudden that's 8d10. Not to mention if any of them critically fail, and you can heal off of it. There's an option that turns the melee attack of the Ogre Hook into an up to 60-foot ranged attack. There's so many cool interactions to be done with the Mythic system, and I think that's where it would shine the most, is breaking the rules of Pathfinder. A 60-foot range melee strike on a magic item that costs a mythic point, that is what I want out of Mythic. So, if you're really looking to get more power, more zhuzh out of your Mythic gameplay, consider creating more Mythic magic items. Honestly, I would buy an entire supplement of Mythic magic items. Items that augment you with crazy strong passives, that have unique things to keep them mythic, like the fact that Gut Ripper needs to kill a creature every single day, otherwise it loses its power forever. I love that. Imagine giving that to a barbarian who has this crazy powerful magic item that can let them attack from 60 feet, but they have to kill something every day. That's storytelling built into the item, and it gives them a massive line-based effect like a weaker lightning bolt they can do with a mythic point. That's what I want. That's what I want Mythic to be. Maybe it's not what Mythic should be, but I think there's a lot of room to respect the way Paizo has created Mythic, while also expanding it into that crazy, powerful, cool Mythic idea using Mythic items. And remember, they don't just have to be weapons. They can be worn items, they can be rings. Hell, you can make Mythic alchemical items. I don't even know what that would look like. Get your brain churning. Homebrew some stuff. If you're like me and you wish the Pathfinder Mythic system was a little bit more impactful, maybe you can expand it in this way, the same way I'm going to. Oh, my players are going to hate me and then love me.